discovering the source of the problem. Our senses contribute to our ignorance. To our faculties of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling, objects seem to exist in their own right. Presented with this distorted information, the mind assents to this exaggerated status of things. Buddhists call such a mind ignorant for accepting this false appearance instead of resisting it. The ignorant mind does not question appearances to determine if they are correct, it merely accepts that things are as they appear. Next, we become committed to the seeming truth of the concreteness of objects, thinking, if this is not true, what could possibly be true? As we do so, our ignorant misapprehension gets stronger. For instance, when we first encounter something or someone nice, we briefly take notice of the object of our attention, merely recognizing its presence. The mind at this point is pretty much neutral. But when circumstances cause us to pay more attention to the object, it appears to be attractive in a way that is integral to the object. When the mind adheres to the object this way, thinking that it exists as it appears, lust for the object and hatred for what interferes with getting it can set in. When our own self is involved, we emphasize that connection. Now it is my body, my stuff, my friends, or my car. We exaggerate the object's attractiveness, obscuring its faults and disadvantages, and become attached to it as helpful in acquiring pleasure, whereby we are forcibly led into lust, as if by a ring in our nose. We might also exaggerate the object's unattractiveness, making something minor into a big defect, ignoring its better qualities, and now we view the object as interfering with our pleasure, being led into hatred, again as if by a ring in our nose. Even if the object does not seem to be either agreeable or disagreeable but just an ordinary thing in the middle, ignorance continues to prevail, although in this case it does not generate desire or hatred. As the Indian scholar Yogi Nagarjuna says in his 60 stanzas of reasoning, how could great poisonous afflictive emotions not arise in those whose minds are based on inherent existence? Even when an object is ordinary, their minds are grasped by the snake of destructive emotions. Cruder conceptions of I and mine evoke grosser destructive emotions, such as arrogance and belligerence, making trouble for yourself, your community, and even your nation. These misconceptions need to be identified by watching your own mind. As the Indian thinker and yogi Dharmakirti says in his exposition of Buddhist thinking, in one who exaggerates self, there is always adherence to I. Though that adherence, there is attachment to pleasure. Through attachment, disadvantages are obscured, and advantages seen, whereby there is strong attachment, and objects that are mine are taken up as means of achieving pleasure. Hence, as long as there is attraction to self, so long do you resolve in cyclic existence. It is crucial to identify and recognize different thought processes. Some thoughts merely make us aware of an object, such as seeing a watch as just a watch without any afflictive emotions like lust. Other thoughts determine correctly that an object is good or bad but still do not introduce any afflictive emotions. These thoughts just recognize good as good and bad as bad. However, when the idea that objects inherently exist takes hold, fundamental ignorance has been introduced. As the mistaken assumption of inherent existence becomes stronger, lust or hatred become involved. The turning point from mere awareness to misconception comes when ignorance exaggerates the status of the goodness or badness of the object so that it comes to be seen as inherently good or bad, inherently attractive or unattractive, inherently beautiful or ugly. Ignorantly misjudging this false appearance to be fact opens the way for lust, hatred, and myriad other counterproductive emotions. These destructive emotions, in turn, lead to actions based on lust and hatred. These actions establish karmic predispositions in the mind that drive the process of cyclic existence from life to life. The root of cyclic existence The process I just described is how we are ruined by our own ignorance and fixed to this round of suffering life after life that we call cyclic existence. Some levels of mind which we normally identify as correct are actually exaggerations of the status of persons and things that are trouble for ourselves and others. Ignorance keeps us from seeing the truth, the fact that people and other phenomena are subject to the laws of cause and effect but do not have essential being that is independent in and of themselves. You need to identify this process as well as you can, gradually developing greater and greater understanding of the sequence of events, beginning with dispassionate observation and culminating in counterproductive emotions and actions. Without ignorance, counterproductive emotions are impossible. They cannot occur. Ignorance is their support. This is why Nagarjuna's student, the Indian scholar Yogi Aryadeva says, just as the capacity to feel is present throughout the body, ignorance dwells in all afflictive emotions. Therefore all afflictive emotions are overcome through overcoming ignorance. Meditative reflection. Consider 1. Does the attractiveness of an object seem to be integral to it? 2. Does the attractiveness of an object obscure its faults and disadvantages? 3. Does exaggeration of the pleasantness of certain objects lead to lust? 4. Does exaggeration of the unpleasantness of certain objects lead to hatred? 5. Notice how you first perceive an object. Then notice if the object is good or bad. Then conclude that the object has its own independent basis for existing. Then conclude that the object's goodness or badness exists inherently in the object. Then generate lust or hatred according to your previous judgment.